Yes, yes, it was. Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we have some video gaming adjacent content. We're going to be talking about The Last of Us on HBO. Now, I think we're all aware that The Last of Us is based off of The Last of Us from Naughty Dog, the video game. If you're not aware, then like, where have you been since the PS3? So today I want to talk about the show. I want to talk about, was it good or not, which I've already kind of given away. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Let's just talk about some of the things that we enjoyed about it, and just, you know, dive a little bit into the show, what we enjoyed. Now, obviously, there are going to be spoilers for the first episode of The Last of Us, but also, like, if you've played the game before, I mean, you know what's going to happen, right? So I suppose you could say if you haven't watched the first episode of The Last of Us, don't watch this video, but also if you've played The Last of Us, you're probably pretty safe to watch this. So first off, it's worthy of noting, I'm not a film critic, I'm just a guy that plays video games, so take my opinion for what it's worth, but I really enjoyed the first episode of The Last of Us. I thought it was set up really well, it held true to a lot of the things in the video game from the PS3. I thought the cast was done exceptionally well, and they really represented their characters really well from the video game. And there were a few deviations from the video game in a few different aspects, and I think they all worked out really well. One of the major highlights for me was at the very beginning where it opened with, you know, this 1960s like panel on this talk show where you've got these two doctors talking about global pandemics. Also, Last of Us, maybe a little too soon? I'm kidding. And it really kind of sets the stage for like this fungal pandemic going to be, yeah, it's gonna be bad. And I think they did a really good job of setting the stakes and really setting up just how like dire this was going to be, that this wasn't something that humankind could easily recover from. Now, granted, it's really important to realize that this portion of the show takes place in the 60s, where medicine had not modernized as much as it had in 2013 whenever the game actually came out. So they're setting the stakes that like this is going to be really bad should this ever happen. But also you have to think about the fact that this talk show is happening in the 60s, and they're saying there's no physically possible way that we could ever cure this. But then also the show is taking place 50 years later. So really it's more of a, we don't expect there to be a way to cure this, but they leave out that possibility, which we know if we've played the game, there is a distinct possibility that they could cure the cordyceps brain infection. And maybe that was intended by setting that first part back so far in the past as like the foreshadowing of something really bad to come, but like also making the viewer think like, hey, that was in the past, and so there is still a chance. Like, it's not completely hopeless. Really, I thought that was a really great way to start it. I thought they were just gonna jump right into the prologue like the video game did, and so I thought that was a really great way to start. Then next we move into the prologue, which we're all a little bit more familiar with. There were some extra scenes thrown in that, you know, were not in the video game. We've got the interactions with the neighbors. We've got going into downtown Austin and going to like the watch shop. But aside from that, you know, we have our Sarah and Joel interactions that we were all kind of accustomed to. And I thought Nico Parker and Pedro Pascal had that really good like Sarah and Joel vibe. Like, they meshed well together, and Nico Parker did a really good job of representing Sarah from the prologue of The Last of Us. Now, I want to transition that into talking about probably my favorite part of the entire episode, and that's going to be that night whenever Sarah goes over to her neighbor's place and discovers, you know, the first infected. Well, the first infected is in, you know, the first she sees, not the first, you know what I mean, hopefully. And I really liked this because, you know, if the 1960s like interview piece didn't really set the stakes, this scene certainly does kind of represent just how dire this situation is going to be. Not that anyone should make any sort of comparison, but if you compare like The Last of Us, the beginning of The Last of Us, to like The Walking Dead, we know that zombies in The Walking Dead are scary because, you know, if you get scratched by one or bitten by one or anything like that, you become infected and you will very quickly turn into a walker. But aside from that, like, that's really the only scary part, is the fact that they can infect you. You know, they're not quick. You know, if you have a walker that's, you know, kind of destroyed, or, you know, they're weak, or their body has been, you know, destroyed in some way, they remain that way, and they're really only in danger if you get close to them. What we have here, though, in The Last of Us, is they really do a good job of showing how dangerous this infection is going to be, because you have this woman who is a paraplegic, who we assume is relegated to this wheelchair, who can't move, who is deaf. And we see just this massive, crazy transformation into, I mean, you know, for lack of a better words, a zombie, who can run around the place, who's like jumping, who's literally terrifying. And so this really sets the stage, and you have this level of danger from like something like The Walking Dead, where they can infect you and there's no cure, but also that it can reanimate people that are crippled or that are, you know, have lost some sort of range of motion. You know, it makes everyone deadly in the sense of from an infection standpoint, but also from the standpoint that they can catch up with you, you know, that they have mobility and like a crazy amount of mobility. So I think that scene really set the stage for how scary these infected were going to be, and really just how high the stakes were going to be whenever trying to deal with it. The rest of the, you know, the prologue piece really played out the way that we expected. And I mean, it's still, I haven't played this game since it came out on the PS3, but I mean, it still got me. You know, the point wherever Joel and Sarah interact with the soldier, you hear the gunshots, you hear Tommy shoot the soldier, you have Joel and Tommy looking at each other, and then you just kind of hear the whines from Sarah on the ground, and you just hear like that gasping. And I mean, I don't know, it hit me. Like that hit me just like it did whenever I played the video game. Like a lot of these things just came flooding back, like all those emotions of like, ah, shit, like I didn't expect that to happen. And I mean, I did because I'd played the game, but it's just like, you know, it brought me back to when I first played the game. And like you thought there was going to be some sort of hope that, you know, Joel and Sarah were going to continue throughout the game. And then you realize, no, this is where Sarah's story ends already. So I feel like they did the prologue really, really well for this. And I thought Pedro Pascal did a great job playing Joel as well. I also really loved the like fleeing the home scene, you know, trying to get away with Joel, Tommy, and Sarah. I thought that was just like super well done. And I loved the perspective of like how it looked in the truck when they were trying to escape. And it felt like you were in the game. Like they replicated that from the game so well. Like you're looking around, looking to see what all's going on. And just that perspective, they just absolutely nailed it. Like just everything about that scene just really, I don't know, it just hit right. I loved that part. Now advancing on into the first part of the game, we meet Tess, we meet Joel, we meet Marlene, we meet Ellie. All of these actors did a phenomenal job playing their respective roles. No complaints here from me, really. I thought Bella Ramsey really did a good job of playing like that rebellious, spunky kind of vibe that Ellie has. She meshed really well, I thought, with Tess and with Joel. I really enjoyed, you know, those interactions towards the end of the episode. One thing I really liked, though, was the sort of realism, if you want to use the word realism for, you know, a show that's talking about basically fungal zombies. But the level of realism that they brought to the show that you kind of get away with not having whenever you're in a video game. Now, a big portion of this so far is in the first episode, the lack of stealth. There is a distinct lack of stealth that if you played The Last of Us and you do your mission, you know, to go fight Robert, there is a heavy amount of sneaking that is involved in the game. And like, here's the thing though, is that something that, you know, I think as a collective, the gaming society makes fun of stealth mechanics in video games for good reason, because of how unrealistic they are. And if they had tried to put that into the TV show, I mean, we probably still might have forgiven it, but it would have been potentially almost laughable. And the showrunners even addressed this. They said, you know, look, Joel's not going to be sneaking around as much. He's in his 50s. Like, this man cannot be walking around like that, you know, crouched and just walking around like crab leg, like crouched for the entire show. Like, that's not realistic. Otherwise, you know, his knees would give out and he'd probably just like fall down. You know, to test this, I even tried just like seeing if I could sneak around, which one, you know, you can't. And two, just see how long, like, I'm in decent shape, just to see how long like I could stay crouched like that. And I guarantee, like, if I was in The Last of Us and it required me to be crouching like that for basically the rest of my life, I would either have quads like a champ or I would just be straight up dead. So I can certainly appreciate that it looks like they're going to try to, you know, bring in the silence and trying to be quiet, but also not the quote unquote ridiculous, I can't think of a better word, stealth mechanics that The Last of Us had, where, you know, you crouch and just you're basically invisible in terms of sound and in terms of sight to your enemies. I think it's definitely a realistic portion of life that they brought to the screen, which I think was definitely needed. Another thing that I really enjoyed is they really humanized Joel, in my opinion, from what they did in the video game. You know, in the video game, if the crouching and, you know, again, having the quads of a champ didn't already make him larger than life, just like his ability to do literally everything was kind of insane, and just how strong he was. And the show definitely presents us with more of a broken man. Like, and we can see that at the very beginning, you know, of call it Act 1 of the show, whenever, you know, the child comes in and we see this child, unfortunately, you know, get killed because they're infected. And we have, you know, we have to burn the bodies, and Joel just, you know, just give them to me. Like, you can just tell, like, part of his soul is just like gone. It's just been ripped out. Especially, you can just see it, like his eyes are just almost empty whenever he's like carrying the child's body over to the fire pit. Additionally, you know, you see him like taking drugs, drinking. Like, these are things that, like, I don't know, in a post-apocalyptic future where like your child has been taken from you, your brother is now missing. Like, yeah, I can see it. And so I think it makes Joel a lot more relatable as a human than this like larger than life video game character. All right, well, I don't know that I need to belabor this anymore. In short, I thought the episode was great. I am really, really excited for the rest of the show, and I will most certainly be watching the rest of it and be watching the next episode on Sunday. What do you guys think? Did you play the game? Are you excited for the show? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on what you thought about the show, about the video game, and just in general, your overall hype level. If you have nothing to share, just, you know, throw your favorite emoji down there. You know, your engagement really helps out the channel. Oh, and hey, you didn't think you were gonna get away with this without me saying, hit the like button and subscribe, notification bell, so you get notifications for new videos and live streams. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you in a later video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and if you haven't yet, go watch The Last of Us.